March 16, 1988. It was a spring afternoon in Halabja, a Kurdish town in northern Iraq. Children played in the streets. Families prepared dinner. People went about their ordinary lives. By sunset, 5,000 of them would be dead. This is the story of the Halabja chemical attack, one of the most horrific uses of chemical weapons against civilians in modern history. To understand what happened in Halabja, we need to go back a few years. In 1980, Iraq and Iran went to war. It was a brutal conflict that would last 8 years and claim over 1 million lives. Iraq's leader, Saddam Hussein, feared that Iraq's Kurdish population in the north might support Iran. The Kurds are an ethnic group with their own language and culture, spread across Iraq, Iran, Turkey, and Syria. For decades, they'd faced persecution. Saddam's response was a campaign called Anfal, an Arabic word meaning the spoils of war. It was a systematic military operation to crush Kurdish resistance. Villages were destroyed. People were forcibly relocated. Thousands disappeared. But Saddam had another weapon in his arsenal, something far more terrifying: chemical weapons. By 1988, Iraq had already used chemical agents, like mustard gas and nerve agents, multiple times against Iranian troops. But what happened in Halabja was different. This time, the target wasn't soldiers on a battlefield. It was an entire town of civilians. Halabja sat just a few miles from the Iranian border. In March 1988, during the final phase of the Iran-Iraq War, Iranian forces had taken control of the town with help from Kurdish fighters. For Saddam's regime, this was unacceptable. On March 16th, Iraqi forces launched a counterattack. It began conventionally, with artillery and bombs. People in Halabja were used to this. They knew to take shelter. Many rushed to their basements thinking they'd be safe underground. They couldn't have been more wrong. Then came the aircraft. Witnesses reported seeing Iraqi planes flying low over the town. What fell from the sky wasn't ordinary bombs. Survivors described canisters that exploded quietly, releasing clouds of smoke in different colors: white, black, yellow. Some smelled sweet, like apples. Others like garlic or rotten eggs. At first, people were confused. Then the symptoms began. Eyes burned. Skin blistered. People struggled to breathe. Children screamed. Those who'd taken shelter in basements where the heavier-than-air gases settled died first. Families huddled together trying to escape, collapsed in doorways and streets. The Iraqi military had dropped a mixture of chemical agents on Halabja, mustard gas, and nerve agents including sarin, taboon, and VX. The attack lasted several hours. When it was over, the town was silent. When journalists arrived days later, they found scenes that shocked the world. Bodies lay everywhere. A father still holding his infant child. Families frozen in their final moments trying to flee. The chemicals had killed quickly and indiscriminately men, women, children, the elderly, animals. Thousands more were injured, many permanently. Survivors suffered burns, blindness, respiratory problems, and cancers that would plague them for decades. Babies would be born with birth defects years later. The immediate death toll was around 5,000 people. But the true number of victims, when you count those who died later from their injuries and illnesses, may never be known. Iranian journalists and officials documented the aftermath. Photos were published. The world saw the horror, but the international response was muted. Why? At the time, Iraq was considered an ally by many Western nations, including the United States. In the broader Cold War context, Iran was seen as the bigger threat. Some governments downplayed the attack or cast doubt on who was responsible, though the evidence clearly pointed to Iraq. It would take years before the full truth was acknowledged. For the people of Halabja, justice came slowly, if at all. After Saddam Hussein was overthrown in 2003 following the U.S. invasion of Iraq, he was put on trial. Among the charges, genocide against the Kurdish people, including the Halabja attack. In 2006, he was convicted and executed, though primarily for other crimes. Ali Hassan al-Majid, the Iraqi general who orchestrated the Al-Anfal campaign and earned the nickname Chemical Ali, was also tried and executed in 2010. But for survivors, no trial could undo what happened. No verdict could bring back their loved ones or restore their health. Today, Halabja stands as a living memorial. A monument has been built on a hilltop overlooking the town, honoring the victims. Every March 16th, survivors gather to remember. The attack also had lasting global implications. It demonstrated the horrific reality of chemical weapons used against civilians and strengthened international resolve to prevent their use, though tragically, we've seen chemical attacks in Syria and elsewhere in recent years. You might wonder, why should Americans care about something that happened in a small Kurdish town over 30 years ago? Because Halabja represents something larger than one attack, in one place at one time. It shows us what happens when the international community turns a blind eye to atrocities because it's politically convenient. It reminds us that weapons of mass destruction aren't abstract concepts, they're real. Tools of terror that kill real people. The Chemical Weapons Convention, which bans the production and use of chemical weapons, was signed in 1993 and came into force in 1997. Today, 193 nations are parties to it. Halabja helped make that happen. You might wonder, why should Americans care about something that happened in a small Kurdish town over 30 years ago? Because Halabja represents something larger than one attack, in one place at one time. It shows us what happens when the international community turns a blind eye to atrocities because it's politically convenient. It reminds us that weapons of mass destruction aren't abstract concepts, they're real. Tools of terror that kill real people. The Chemical Weapons Convention, which bans the production and use of chemical weapons, was signed in 1993 and came into force in 1997. Today, 193 nations are parties to it. Halabja helped make that happen. But the struggle continues. Chemical weapons have been used in recent conflicts, including in Syria. The vigilance that Halabja demanded of the world cannot fade. For the survivors of Halabja, life goes on. Children go to school. People work, marry, have families, but they live with the memories, the scars, and the loss. One survivor, Nasreen Siddiq, lost her entire family in the attack. She was just 10 years old. Years later, she said something that captures the heart of this story. She said she wants the world to remember Halabja, not because she wants revenge, but because she wants to make sure it never happens again, to anyone, anywhere. On March 16, 1988, poison fell from the sky over Halabja. 5,000 people died. Thousands more suffered. The world watched but did too little, too late. We remember Halabja not to dwell on horror, but to honor the victims and survivors, and to remind ourselves that never again isn't just a phrase, it's a promise we must keep. Because every person in Halabja had a name, a story, dreams for the future. They deserved better, and we owe it to them to build a world where chemical weapons are truly a thing of the past.